Marvel, Hela's husband breaks the universe. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 51, Being Truthful, scared Hela. It didn't matter if Odin really wanted Hela to become the king of gods. But one thing was certain. That was, Odin must destroy Yubi. This mortal who dared to tarnish Odin's blood. He would have to die. If he didn't die, Odin would not be worthy of being the ruler of Asgard. As for asking Hela to kill Yubi, this was Odin's condition. He couldn't forgive Hela for her rebellion before, this had always been a thorn in his heart. Hela must do something if she wanted to calm him down. And killing Yubi would be very good. If Hela really did this, it would be proof that Hela had forgiven him. The most important thing was to force Hela to kill Yubi, which was definitely a cunning way of killing people. As for whether Hela would agree to this condition, Odin thought it was very likely that she would agree. Hela had a strong obsession with the position of the king of gods, of which Odin was certain about. According to Odin's own understanding, if he told Hela that she had to kill a designated person to become the king of God, then Hela would do it no matter who that person was. Hela's character was like this, and Odin knew Hela too well. Just aside, after hearing Odin's words, Frigga gave a wry smile. In fact, Frigga didn't know whether Hela would kill Yubi, as Odin said. But one thing Frigga could be sure of, if Hela really did what Odin said. Whether it was for Yubi, or for Hela, it was a method of murder and condemnation. Hela had been lonely for most of her life, walking with the killing all the way, and finally had someone she really liked. Why did Odin have to force them apart? Was the noble blood of the Odin's family really more important than Hela? Frigga for the first time felt that Odin in front of her was so strange. In the end, Frigga sighed and let it go. After all, it's Odin's father and daughter business, and she didn't bother to mix it up. As for what Hela would choose in the end, she didn't know, and she couldn't guess. Odin's request, Hela, was not yet clear. After a period of indulgence, Hela laid weakly on the bed, looking at Yubi with a bitter look. This beast, don't you know how to put it away? My old lady's waist is almost broken. Despite this, Hela's eyes were more like acting like a baby. My dear, I want to tell you one thing. Hela suddenly said to Yubi. Her expression suddenly became serious. Yubi blinked and motioned for Hela to speak. Yubi had already guessed a little bit about what Hela was about to say. Maybe Hela was going to have a showdown with him. In fact, it was true. Hela really did plan to completely have a showdown with Yubi. Now, Hela had basically guessed that Yubi already knew her identity. Maybe Yubi still didn't understand what she did before. But one day he would know, wouldn't he? Instead of letting Yubi investigate afterwards, she might as well confess herself first. As for Yubi's willingness to accept her as an evil woman, Hela still had a little confidence in her heart. Her relationship with Yubi was not fake. Hela firmly believed this. Actually, my actual identity is the goddess of death of Asgard, Hela. This was a showdown. Hela finally admitted her identity. Then Hela looked at Yubi with a worried look, hoping to see Yubi's attitude. Wow. I knew my wife was a goddess. But I didn't expect her to be the goddess of death. This is so cool. Are you satisfied with my reaction? Yubi said to Hela in a funny tone and then winked at Hela. Looking at Yubi's shameful picture, Hela had the urge to burst the hammer. She also understood that Yubi really knew her identity a long time ago. However, this was not the point. The point was Hela's past. Was Yubi willing to accept an evil woman with blood on her hands? Hela had no bottom line. Although Yubi was unlikely to abandon her because of her past, however, Hela was still a little flustered. She was very afraid that she would lose this relationship because of her past. Finally, after taking a deep breath, Hela told Yubi of her past. She was still determined to confess, striving for Yubi's leniency. It was always better to surrender than to be found out by Yubi. Yubi did not speak. Instead, he listened to Hela quietly. He had to say that Hela's past really shocked him. In the movie, Hela appeared as the big devil. She was madly cool to the extreme, but it was rarely said what Hela had done. It was only from Hela's mouth that Yubi learned more about Hela's past. After listening to Hela's narration, Yubi's first thought was that this woman was too cruel. Hela was an out-and-out slaughterer. She had committed a single-person slaughter of a civilization more than once. To be honest, it was really difficult for Yubi to combine the murderous Hela with the now worried Hela. In addition, Hela was also a careerist. In order to become the God-King of Asgard, she rebelled. In the process of rebellion, Hela even killed the elite Valkyrie troops of Asgard. A proper filial daughter. However, Hela was even more of a poor person. While peers enjoyed the love of their parents, Hela was already learning how to kill the enemy better. While the other girls were looking forward to a beautiful love, Hela was already leading the army to wage war. It could be said that for Hela to become like this, Odin should bear most of the responsibility. It was Odin who cultivated Hela into a great devil. Hela could even be called the young version of Odin. In a sense, Hela was the most like Odin among Odin's children. After talking about her past, Hela did not dare to look at Yubi's eyes anymore, but lowered her head. She was very scared now that Yubi would abandon her because of her past. But Yubi would not do that, nor could he do that. Regardless of Hela's past, one thing Yubi could be sure of. That was, Hela was his wife, who belonged to him completely. Hela's heart and Hela's body were already in the shape of Yubi. So while Hela was waiting for the trial, Yubi gently hugged Hela. If you do not let me down, I will never let you down. Even if I am an enemy of the world, I will definitely stand in front of you. Because I believe that you will also stand in front of me. A normal relationship was never an unilateral effort by one party. That's not feelings, it's offerings. Yubi could accept Hela and do anything for her. Yubi also believed that Hela would give up everything for him. They loved each other and supported each other. While they were lovers, they were also relatives. They formed a family, and their love for each other flowed in each other's blood. As the ancient saying goes, if you do not fail me, I will not fail you. Episode 52, Conditions for Becoming a God King. In the year that he met and fell in love with Hela, Yubi never asked Hela to do anything for him. Hela was the same, even if Yubi's ability could help her a lot. They loved each other sincerely, and they would voluntarily help each other. This was the fundamental reason why Yubi could hold his heart and ignore the outsiders. Because of Hela, all of Yubi's imagination of his lover had been satisfied. Hela had already anticipated Yubi's reaction. Although she knew in her heart that her past would not shake Yubi's feelings for her. But Hela at this moment was still moved. Since her birth to the present, Hela had experienced life through a long period of time. But there had never been a person who could trust her like Yubi, regardless of the reason. This kind of unconditional trust made Hela gratified, but she was more touched. At this moment, all the previous fears and worries of Hela were melted, like the snow in the sun. I believe you. Hela didn't say much. She just looked into Yubi's eyes and said affectionately. If it weren't for the two of them being too crazy last night. And if Hela's body was not too tired, something would have probably happened. But this was not important. Sometimes life needed not only passion, but also plainness. Yubi and Hela did not move. They quietly enjoyed the peace at the moment. Hela's confession was already in Yubi's expectation, so it wasn't a surprise. Overall, this was more like an episode in the lives of the two. Apart from making the relationship between the two more encrypted and inseparable, there was no other change. Yubi would still prepare food for Hela every day, and he would still enjoy the shyness of the other party after molesting Hela. Hela hadn't changed much either. When facing Yubi's intimacy, she would still show a helpless look and a look of amorous eyes. But after a thorough confession, Hela became more happy. At the very least, now occasionally, she would turn her back to the guest and make fun of Yubi. Although Yubi seized the opportunity to be a bully in most cases, both of them were happy. And while the relationship between Yubi and Hela heated up rapidly, the outside world was also undergoing earth-shaking changes. The plot of Iron Man 2 began, and Tony Stark was attacked at the racing circuit. What broke down Tony even more was that his time was running out. Palladium metal poisoning almost sentenced Tony to death. If a new element to replace palladium was not found, Tony would die young. Even though Yubi knew about this problem, he didn't intervene. Because Tony's father had arranged everything, Tony would eventually solve this problem and complete the transition from a young child to a superhero. It could be said that this near-death experience was the main reason for Tony's complete transformation. Yubi didn't want to interfere too much in the plot. He was more like an observer, an audience, watching everything happening in the Marvel world up close. Just like in the Marvel universe, those observers, watchers, all over the universe were the same. In addition, there was another news that attracted Yubi's attention. Captain America, the first superhero born in the USA. After sleeping in the glacier for more than half a century, he reappeared before the eyes of the world. More importantly, the appearance of Captain America also brought another very important thing, the cosmic Rubik's Cube Tesseract. Yubi knew the plot, so he clearly understood that there was space stone in the cosmic Rubik's Cube. And the unearthed Captain America and the Tesseract symbolized that the Marvel Universe had officially entered the superhero era. After that, superheroes would appear on a large scale like a blowout. The most exciting era in the Marvel Universe had just begun. At the same time, a certain purple sweet potato essence, who was still wandering in the universe, also started his journey of destiny. Thanos, the crazy titan of the eternal race. He was eager to collect all 6 infinity stones, to fulfill the long-cherished wish of his life. A gorgeous and dangerous era was coming. Once again, Hela was pulled into the illusion by Odin. Looking at the face that she hated the most, Hela took a lot of effort to resist piercing a sword through it. Because Hela knew that she couldn't cause damage to Odin here, so she didn't intend to waste her efforts. "What are you doing again? Test where my next sword will pierce your body?" Hela said coldly. For this father, she did not even have the slightest affection. He was a bastard. Hela firmly believed it. "If I said I would let you go back to Asgard, how would you choose?" Odin's first sentence shocked Hela a little. She couldn't even believe that this was what Odin said. Was it possible that Odin was really old? Was he confused? Scheming? This kind of sentence was not something Odin would say when he was normal. "Are you begging me for mercy? Begging me to spare you?" Hela was confused, and didn't understand why Odin found herself. "No, I just need a good heir. At present, you are the most suitable heir for me. If you can complete my test, I will give you a chance. As for the past, I can selectively forget it." Odin said this to Hela very earnestly. As for its truth and falseness, it was not clear. At the very least, Hela was a little bit convinced. Because Thor was really bad. It's not that Thor was bad, but that he was too bad for the heir to a god king. Although Hela did not meet Thor, through Hydra, Hela still knew a lot about Thor. Hela actually paid attention to this unknown brother for a while. But after seeing Thor's various behaviors on the earth, even Hela had to admit that Thor's brain was only full of muscles, and there was no brain. It was precisely because of this that Hela believed Odin a little. After all, compared with an incompetent heir, Hela was obviously more suitable. Seeing Hela being silent, Odin knew that she was moved. She didn't agree, but she didn't object either, did she? That was enough. So Odin said again, "The test is actually very simple. You can easily do it with your ability. Kill the mortal who is with you. He has tainted the noble blood of Odin's family." After so long, Odin finally stated his test. "Hela, don't you have an obsession with the throne of the king? Then, I will give you this opportunity. It only requires you to kill a mortal, which is not difficult for you at all, right?" It was just beyond Odin's expectation that Hela, who was still calm at first, changed completely after hearing these words. After feeling that terrible killing intent. Even Odin frowned. Episode 53, Honey, You Are My Queen. Odin didn't understand why Hela had such a strong killing intent after hearing his condition. In Odin's eyes, his condition was not excessive. Think about it, you only need to kill a mortal to become a god king. For the obsessive Hela, what a bargain. Unfortunately, what Odin didn't know was how much Yubi weighed in Hela's heart now. "Odin, do you know? In my long and dark life, he is the only light that came in. I can give up everything for him, even being the 9 realms god king." Hela's aura was fully released, and the former goddess of death had returned. Feeling that terrible divine power, even Odin had a great sense of oppression. What made Odin feel even more incredible was about Yubi's importance to Hela. The only light? Just that mortal? Although he owed Hela and was very disappointed with her, but right now Odin was really jealous at the moment. Damn, he was a father, and his daughter regarded him as an enemy. On the contrary, a damn mortal occupied all the heart of his daughter. For the first time, he felt a sense of frustration, a feeling of losing. But more importantly, his killing intent towards Yubi increased. This damn mortal not only tainted the noble blood of the Odin's family, but also tainted Hela's heart. Before Odin could make any comments, Hela went on to say, "I aspire to be the king of the 9 realms. That is the position I deserve. But I won't bow to you. I will use my ability to take back what should belong to me." The meaning of Hela was very obvious. She aspired to become the god king of the 9 realms, using her own means and strength. This was already a declaration of war, the second declaration of war. At this moment, Odin completely gave up on Hela. This child had completely lost her feelings for him and had become Asgard's biggest problem. "You will regret this," Odin said coldly, and then ended the illusion. Hela didn't care. The real decisive battle was never in the illusion. As for Asgard, she was bound to go back there and regain everything she had lost. Rebellion, this was the fine tradition of the Odin's family, and Hela also inherited this tradition perfectly. In fact, Odin's position as the king of gods was not obtained in a fair manner. Few people knew that Odin had 2 brothers, an older brother, and a younger brother. And at the beginning, Odin was not the first heir to the throne of God. His elder brother was. It was only Odin's potential, which created suspense for the position of the king of gods. Then the bloody battle for the throne began. The son killed his father, the younger brother killed his elder brother. Odin's elder brother killed Odin's father, which meant that the previous god king usurped the position of the god king. Then, Odin killed his elder brother and snatched the throne of the king of gods. Compared with what Odin did, this kind of Hela could only be regarded as a basic operation. After returning to reality again, Hela saw Yubi standing in front of her. "I'm fine," Hela said after looking at Yubi's concerned eyes. Then, Hela thought of her conversation with Odin before, and a sneer appeared at the corner of her mouth. He actually counted on her to kill Yubi for the position of the king of gods, which was really funny. Hela would rather kill Odin and never take the position of the king of gods. It was impossible for her to attack Yubi. But when it came to the position of the king of gods, Hela did have a plan to return to Asgard. Odin had been sitting on the seat of the king long enough, it was time for a change. Thinking of this, Hela and Yubi shared their thoughts. Now that she had exposed her identity in front of Yubi, she didn't need to hide herself anymore. She could speak her mind. After hearing Hela's plan to return to Asgard, Yubi nodded and did not refuse. It was just right. He also had an account that he had to settle with Odin. Yubi had a bad temper. Anyone who struck at him was his enemy and would face his counterattack. Odin was no exception. It was impossible for Yubi to let him go after showing his murderous intent to Yubi. It's also time to settle accounts with Odin. The two couples hit it off immediately and decided to go to Asgard and ask Odin for an account. As for the position of the king of gods, Hela was bound to win. She believed that after being dormant for so long, she had the strength to challenge Odin. In fact, Hela, who could smash Thor's hammer with her bare hands, was absolutely capable of posing a great threat to Odin. Odin was very strong, but Hela was not weak either. By the way, if you are the king of gods, then what am I? Suddenly, Yubi thought of a question and asked Hela. Anyway, Yubi had no idea about the position of the king of gods, and he had no interest in being a leader. But this way, his position was a bit awkward. The king's lover? After Hela heard what Yubi said, a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. "My dear, you are my queen," Hela said with a smirk. Thor felt very unlucky. After he came to the earth, he had a happy time. Only recently, he received a message from Asgard which asked him to return to Asgard immediately. The most important thing was that Odin saw everything he did on Earth. This also meant that Odin was looking for him to settle accounts. For his father, Thor had his respects and fears. But it didn't matter, Thor had been beaten up from childhood. This and that, Thor was used to it. Besides, didn't he get into a big disaster? Didn't he just play a little bit? Wouldn't Odin be too angry if you don't want to come back? With this thought, Thor bid farewell to his girlfriend Jane Foster and his friends from Avengers Group. Then he contacted Heimdall directly and asked him to open the Rainbow Bridge. Soon, Heimdall lowered the Rainbow Bridge and successfully took Thor back to Asgard. Very soon, Thor realized the seriousness of the matter. Odin was not only angry at what he did on Earth but also disappointed. Disappointed that his son was such a rude critic. Odin, who did not have a qualified heir, was very melancholy and felt that Asgard's future was worrying. Even Frigga, this kind mother who had always been very fond of Thor, looked disappointed at Thor this time. There was a hatred of iron not becoming steel. Frigga never doubted Thor's excellence. In fact, Thor was indeed a good boy. He was brave, strong, and full of integrity. Thor was a good man, but he was not a good heir to the king. He was too innocent. Even if Thor could have a third of Loki's black belly, Frigga and Odin would be satisfied. In fact, Thor did grow up in the future. Thor in Thor 3 had transformed into a qualified king. But unfortunately, the price of this transformation was too great. Both parents died, his home was destroyed, and the people of Asgard were massacred. With the growth established in such tragedy, one could imagine how painful Thor would be in the future. But now that there was one more Yubi, Thor's future had many more variables. The future might not be as painful as in the original book, or it might be more gloomy. Episode 54, Coming to Asgard. Father, did I do something wrong again? At this time, Thor, who didn't know that his life was about to become a tragedy, looked at Odin carefully and asked. Odin sighed, closed his eyes, and adjusted his mentality. Then he looked at Thor again. Your matter, I will settle accounts with you later. As for now, you go and gather the troops, the enemy is coming. Odin said to Thor. The enemy he was talking about was naturally Hela. Since the end of the previous illusion, Odin knew that Hela would definitely return to Asgard. And it won't be too late. She would definitely take advantage of him while he was still alive. Because Odin knew that Hela cared more about her revenge than becoming the God King. That's why he called Thor back, just to welcome the coming Hela. As for Thor, he could only expect him to grow in the future. Asgard, once extremely glorious, was now facing a major crisis. It has to be said that karma always bears fruit. When Asgard was preparing for a big battle, Yubi took Hela to Kamatage. That's right, he came to find the Supreme Master. The arrival of Yubi and his wife did not surprise Gui. She was always so calm and unhurried, with a sage-like attitude. Two distinguished guests, I don't know why you are looking for me? The Ancient One still respected the pair of Yubi and Hela. After all, Yubi had saved the Earth before. Although she was the only one who knew about this. Mage, I know that you have a high level of mastery in space magic. I really want to ask you for a favor this time. I hope you open a passage to Asgard. I know it's troublesome. Yubi said to Gui. Although Yubi had a bad impression of Gui, he had to have an attitude of asking for help. From any angle, it was difficult to find the dark history of the Ancient One. Asgard? Are you going to war? Gui glanced at Hela on the side and guessed Hela's identity. This was for Odin, the king of Asgard. In fact, this was also normal. The Supreme Mage had also learned about Asgard's previous rebellion. After all, Hela was sealed on the earth back then. Besides, Yubi went to trouble Odin, which did not surprise Master Gui. Odin had found her before, hoping to erase this mortal. It's just that Gui refused, and only promised Odin that she would teach this mortal some lesson. But in fact, Gui just wanted to trap Yubi and let Yubi owe her a favor. As for being the enemy of Yubi, Gui had not gone crazy yet. Don't worry about this matter. The Ancient One, it has nothing to do with the earth. Hela also stood up at this time and said to Gui. The best way to travel from Earth to Asgard was, of course, through the Rainbow Bridge. But Asgard obviously won't teleport the two of them there, so they could only find another way. For example, it was a very good idea to ask the Supreme Master for help. Well, as you wish. Gui did not refuse, but agreed to send Yubi and Hela to Asgard. As for whether this would pit Odin, Gui didn't care. Because Gui knew that Odin, like herself, would die sooner or later, ending their era. In front of Yubi and his wife, Gui stretched out a huge portal. On the other side of the portal was the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard. As long as they crossed this portal, Yubi and Hela could reach Asgard. This ability was really convenient. If you are interested, you can come to learn magic from me at any time. The promises I made to you are valid at all times. Seeing Yubi's thoughts, Gui smiled and said to Yubi. This was also Gui's plan in itself. Even if Yubi couldn't be a member of Kamatage, at least she had to forge a good relationship. Yubi was a strong person. It was better to be a friend than an enemy. If I have the opportunity, I will come to ask for advice. Yubi also nodded and said. But in his mind, he had decided that if he had a chance, he would really come to learn. Or he would take the space gem, which was also very convenient. And the space gem was stronger, easier to use, and could teleport farther. Maybe one day in the future, he could collect 6 infinity stones for fun. Of course, those were things for the future. Yubi and Hela did not hesitate. They stepped directly into the portal and entered the territory of Asgard. Odin, we are coming for you. On the Rainbow Bridge, Thor was waiting. Because in front of him, a portal was opening. Before long, 2 figures crossed the portal and stepped onto the Rainbow Bridge. Yubi? Why are you here? Thor, who originally thought it would be an enemy, asked in surprise when he looked at the 2 people coming out of the portal. Because the ones who walked out of the portal were Yubi and Hela, which he had never expected. Don't forget, Yubi got to know Thor at a party hosted by Tony Stark. Yubi also found Hela's true identity from Thor's mouth. So when he saw Thor, Yubi was also a little surprised. Logically speaking, shouldn't his brother-in-law be on the earth? You know him? Hela also felt a little strange. How could Yubi know her silly brother? They still seemed to be friends. His knave IQ was not contagious, right? Her question seemed to remind Yubi not to play with fools. I have met him once. He is a friend. Yubi didn't explain much, because soon he would no longer be a friend. He was very likely to become Thor's murderous enemy. At this time, Hela no longer suppressed herself. After returning to the familiar land of Asgard, Hela felt that she had endless power again. As long as she stood on this land, she could continuously improve her strength. In front of everyone, Hela took up her long, dark green hair and pinned them over her head. Then a strangely shaped crown appeared on Hela's head. Even Hela's dress had changed from a decent black dress to a set of black armor. Hela loved black at all times. And this was what Hela really looked like. And it was also a side of her that Yubi had never seen before. The real Hela, Asgard's goddess of death. Feeling the huge pressure from Hela, Thor's heart also became dignified. At this moment, he guessed the identity of Hela. His unknown sister was now Asgard's greatest enemy. A rebel who intended to rebel and usurp the throne. Where is Odin? Why doesn't he come out? Is it possible that he is scared? After returning to the familiar place, Hela also restored her original character. She was a very arrogant goddess, domineering, and did not explain. Only when facing Yubi would she show her little daughter's posture. In front of other people, she was always aggressive. Episode 55. Hela, who fully demonstrated the aura of the goddess of death, put a lot of pressure on Thor. This pressure was even bigger than when he was facing Odin. It's not that Hela was stronger than Odin, but Odin would not release his murderous intent like this. Yes, Thor was certain that Hela wanted to kill him and had this determination. But even though Thor's personality was a little bit awkward, it could not be said that he had no courage. He was a fearless warrior, and he never thought of backing down in front of the enemy. Now that Hela was determined to be his enemy, Thor no longer hesitated. He directly threw Mjolnir in his hand and smashed it towards Hela. Thor was very skillful at throwing the hammer and hitting a person. In the past, this trick always worked well. Unfortunately, what Thor didn't know now was that his opponent was someone who could play with hammers even better than him. There was a smear at the corner of Hela's mouth in the face of Thor's hammer, flying towards her with terrible destructive power. When Thor's hammer was about to hit her, Hela stretched out her left hand and firmly grasped Thor's hammer. Seeing his hammer struggling in Hela's palm, Thor's eyes widened in disbelief. To be honest, Thor had never imagined this scene. He knew that he was unlikely to be Hela's opponent, but he was also confident that he would not be too far behind. No matter how strong she was, he could at least fight a few rounds. But the current scene gave him a huge impact. The hammer he threw out was actually caught. You should know that Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, was an artifact that Odin ordered the dwarves to build. It also had the blessing of Odin's power. Hence it was not too far behind Gungnir, the gun of eternity. For ordinary opponents, let alone holding Thor's hammer like Hela, it was difficult for them to even shake it. Even a big guy like Hulk couldn't hold Thor's hammer. People who couldn't get the approval of Thor's hammer couldn't afford it at all. But Hela broke this common sense. With Hela's character, she was definitely not recognized by Thor's hammer, and she was not like Captain America. The current scene could only explain one thing. That was, Hela completely relied on her own strength to suppress the supernatural power left by Odin inside Thor's hammer. This is impossible. After thinking of this possibility, Thor blurted out. It was hard for him to believe that his sister, who he had never met before, could actually have the strength to rival Odin. Thor understood Odin's strength the most. That was the current God-King that he was far from able to match. After hearing Thor's words, a trace of contempt flashed in Hela's eyes. Thor's performance, to be honest, disappointed her a bit. She didn't know how Odin taught him. He was only so strong now that he was such a big man. Sure enough, Odin was really old. How cute. You don't even know what is possible. Facing Thor's disbelief, Hela said coldly. Then her 5 slender, white fingers pressed hard. She wanted to smash Thor's hammer. Hela was naturally no stranger to Thor's hammer, because it was a weapon in her hand in her early days. But Hela was different from Thor. She had always been the goddess of death, not the goddess of the hammer. In the final analysis, Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, was just a weapon in Hela's eyes. She had never relied on Thor's hammer, and the reputation she gained was entirely due to her own strength. Thor was different. Although Mjolnir was supposed to be his help, it had also become his shackle. Excessive reliance on the power of Mjolnir was the source of Thor's delay in awakening his own divine power. Under Thor's desperate eyes, Hela's fingers closed, and fine lines visible to the naked eye appeared on Thor's hammer. This artifact, carefully forged by Odin, was at risk of being destroyed for the first time after experiencing a long battle and gaining a great reputation. Hela did not show mercy, and the power on her left hand continued to increase. With her physical strength alone, she could destroy this artifact. The fact was also true. As Hela's strength continued to increase, the cracks on Mjolnir were also increasing and expanding. Finally, with a cry of grief, a large amount of lightning was released from Mjolnir. Then Mjolnir shattered and turned into a pile of scrap iron and fell under Hela's feet. The only thing that was intact is probably the handle of Thor's hammer. After doing all this, Hela looked at Thor with a cruel look. She was very satisfied with the look of despair and disbelief on Thor's face. "You are called Thor? I think you are called the god of hammer," Hela said mercilessly. At this moment, the posture of the great demon king was fully revealed. Behind Hela, Yubi's eyes were a little strange as he watched this scene. Hey, it's really the first time he saw Hela like this. Domineering, cold, strong, and confident. Worthy of being the goddess of death, worthy of being my wife. As for what Hela did, Yubi didn't really dislike it. This was also normal. First of all, Hela was his wife, and everything she did was right. Yubi himself was not a moral person. In addition, after learning about Hela's past, Yubi truly felt that Hela would have no problem doing anything excessive to Asgard. The reason for this was really because Odin and Asgard were too improper. No one was born a villain, and it took a reason to do evil. Hela couldn't get to this point for no reason. Odin must be responsible for it. It could only be said that the evil results of today were Odin and Asgard taking their due blame, and they were paying off debts for their past actions. They couldn't blame anyone. Besides, Yubi had not experienced everything that Hela had experienced. So he was not qualified to point fingers at Hela's behavior. Guys who persuaded others to be kind without understanding the situation were really disgusting. Let's get back to Hela. After crushing Mjolnir, Hela was not as stunned as Thor. Instead, she walked slowly towards Thor. With her hands spread out, 2 swords of the night sky appeared in Hela's hands. She wants to teach Thor, this stupid brother, what was cruelty in the world. Episode 56. Thor also quickly adjusted his mood. Although he had no confidence in his heart, he did not flinch. After roaring to embolden himself, Thor clenched his fists and rushed towards Hela. He was the Thor of Asgard, a fearless warrior. However, before he came to Hela, the 2 swords of the night sky in Hela's hand flew out. At an extremely fast speed, they directly pierced Thor's thigh and left shoulder. In front of the demon king Hela, Thor, who had just experienced Thor 1, was immature like a child. But even though his body had been severely injured, Thor still gritted his teeth and endured the pain without shouting. His will was indeed commendable, but it was a pity that he couldn't change the situation of his low strength. Hela came to Thor almost step by step, and her every step put a lot of pressure on Thor. But Thor didn't sit still. Before and after Hela arrived, he gritted his teeth and used his uninjured right hand, clenched his fist and smashed it towards Hela. However, his attack was directly grasped by Hela. His right hand was as if clamped by steel clamps, unable to move. "I am a little disappointed by your weakness. When I was your age, I was much stronger than you are now. Odin hasn't forced you to slaughter on the battlefield before, right? Then you are really pitiful." Hela disdainfully controlled Thor's right arm, while blacking Odin in front of Thor. Thor was also a little frightened after hearing what Hela said. Being forced to slaughter opponents on the battlefield, was this the past of Hela? Before Thor could understand the problem, Hela squeezed his right arm and twisted it violently. A series of penetrating bones collided and Thor's right hand was directly abolished by Hela. Ah! This time, Thor could no longer suppress the pain and screamed directly. But he was interrupted by Hela when he screamed, because Hela had already smashed his head on the Rainbow Bridge. "When I was very young, I was forced to learn to fight and wander between life and death every day. You should be thankful that I let you avoid this hellish life. But this is also your sorrow, 2 easy days have created a weak you." As if to vent part of the hatred of Odin on Thor first, Hela couldn't help but do it fiercely. Thor was beaten directly, lying on the ground without the strength to struggle. It's just that in Thor's mind, he kept thinking about what Hela said. For the first time in his life, his respect for his father, Odin, was shaken. He realized that perhaps his father, Odin, was not the wise and loving king in his mind. The existence of Hela was the best evidence. In fact, it was precisely because of his failure in raising Hela that Odin changed his strategy of training Thor. Otherwise, if you put the same experiences Hela had suffered on Thor, his situation would not be much better than Hela. No one was accustomed to killing by nature. Hela had also been a white paper from the very beginning and had been dyed black by Odin, step by step. While the faith in Thor's heart began to waver, Hela didn't stop ravaging his body. Grasping the collar of Thor's battle armor, Hela directly pulled Thor up and smashed it hard on the Rainbow Bridge. At this moment, a big sword flew from a distance and was about to slash Hela's body. Hela reacted immediately. She stretched out her hand to strike down the great sword directly, and then looked at the person who came. Heimdall was rushing towards the Rainbow Bridge with a group of Asgard soldiers. Seeing this scene, Hela did not continue to beat Thor, but kicked him aside. And then she walked towards Heimdall and others. Hela at this moment perfectly interprets what was called a villain. The aura suppressed everyone. What Hela didn't notice was that Thor, who had almost been beaten unconscious, flashed a few purple thunders in his hollow eyes. The power that was lurking in Thor, which truly belonged to him, began to recover. In the original plot, Thor awakened his true power after being beaten up by Hela. Then there was a macho man who fell from the sky in Avengers 3 holding a storm battle axe. Besides Hela, the Asgardian fighters led by Heimdall quickly fought with Hela. Just relying on these people was not enough to fight against Hela. Hela could harvest a life in almost every action. Accuracy and elegance were the best interpretation of Hela, as if appreciating the art of killing. Soon, those Asgard warriors died, and everyone had a sword of the night sky stuck in their bodies. Only Heimdall was struggling to support himself under Hela's attack. In the absence of Odin, Asgard could not threaten Hela at all. Heimdall, long time no see. You are still alive. While constantly attacking Heimdall's vital points, Hela spoke to Heimdall. As the old man who followed Odin, Heimdall knew Hela. It was also clear that he could not compete with Hela with his own strength. When facing Hela, Heimdall didn't dare to be distracted. Because he would die if he was not careful. Compared with Hela's monster-level existence, his weakness was pitiful. Now Heimdall's only hope was for Odin to come quickly, otherwise he really was going to die. Just when Hela almost brought Heimdall to desperation, Asgard's strongest finally arrived. Stop it, Hela. The old voice was not loud, but everyone could hear it. As if these words sounded from everyone's heart. Hela stopped her movements when she heard the words. She cast her gaze to the other end of the Rainbow Bridge. There, Odin was holding Gungnir, the gun of eternity, and looked at Hela angrily. Beside Odin, Frigga also looked at her with an inexplicable sadness in her eyes. It's time to settle the bill. Hela let go of Heimdall, who could be killed at any time, and reheld the two swords of the night sky and walked towards Odin. This time when they met, it was completely different from the previous illusion. This time, life and death were to be decided. Yubi also saw the real Odin for the first time, and to be honest, he didn't seem very eye-catching to him. Odin was now very old and looked very weak. Even his back was slightly curved. At a glance, he was no different from an ordinary old man on Earth. But such a shameless person was the undisputed overlord of the 9 realms, God-King Odin. While Yubi was looking at Odin, Odin was also looking at him. When he recognized Yubi as the mortal who had humiliated him, Odin's only one eye flashed a bitter killing intent. To say who Odin hated most now was definitely Yubi. Not only did he sleep with his daughter, but also slapped him. For this kind of shame, if Yubi's body was not broken into pieces, Odin couldn't swallow this breath at all. What Odin didn't expect was that Yubi actually dared to come to the door. Was he really easy to bully as a god king? It could be said that even if Yubi just stood behind Hela and did nothing, it was enough to attract Odin's hatred. He was definitely the person with the highest hatred in the field. Episode 57, Real Name Liberation, Suinjin Open Heaven, 1. Yubi didn't expect that Odin would have this high hatred for him even if he didn't do anything. But it didn't matter. He followed Hela today, and he himself came to Odin to settle accounts. For Odin, Yubi didn't actually have any hostility at first, and of course he didn't have any good feelings. It's just that Odin was about to put himself to death because of his relationship with Hela. This completely offended Yubi. Coupled with Odin's superior posture before, it made Yubi disgust Odin to this point. For such an arrogant fellow who still had a murderous intent for himself, it was naturally impossible for Yubi to not retaliate. The killer should always be ready to be killed. This was fair. So this time when he came to Asgard, not only did Yubi want to protect Hela from accidents, he also planned to solve the threat of Odin. Therefore, when Odin appeared, Yubi had already planned to take action. He was ready to unscrew the old guy's head. However, there was someone who moved faster than Yubi, and that was Hela. As for who wanted Odin to die more, it was definitely Hela. The hatred between the two was different from Yubi's hatred, and it was not forged all at once. It was the result of Odin's betrayal over the long years. If Yubi still had the slightest possibility of reconciling with Odin, then there would be no such possibility between Hela and Odin. In a word, in Hela's view, Odin must die. Hela, holding 2 swords of the night sky, rushed towards Odin at a very fast speed. The dark and huge power of death filled Hela's body at this moment. After all, Odin was not a weak person like Thor and Heimdall, and Hela also knew this. Therefore, when facing Odin, Hela would not hesitate. She would go all out. Even though her own divine power had been used before. When she beat Thor before, she didn't use much power. Odin watched Hela rushing towards him. Hela's eyes were full of killing intent for him, and his heart felt a little pain. Did he regret it? Maybe. But now regret was useless. Odin knew that even if he admitted his mistake now, Hela would not forgive him. Moreover, his pride as the king of gods would not allow him to bow his head and admit his mistakes. Therefore, Odin held the gun of eternity in his hand, and faced Hela, who had rushed over. At this moment, although Odin was still a little old man, his reaction was faster than Hela. Holding Gungnir in his hand, he stabbed Hela fiercely. Between the father and daughter, a battle of life and death broke out for the second time. Many people had an illusion that Odin's strength was average. But if you had carefully understood Odin's record, you would never say that. He conquered the 9 realms, let the other gods of the 9 realms bow their heads and admit to being ruled by Asgard. Defeated Surtur at his peak and put his eternal fire into his own treasure trove. On an expedition in the universe, Odin at the peak of his power overwhelmed most of the civilizations of the universe. The most important thing was that Odin killed gods from the celestial group. A long time ago, the celestial group had planned to use the 9 realms as a testing ground, but Odin fiercely resisted. At that time, Odin, wearing the destroyer armor and holding the spear Gungnir, fought against the ancient gods. In the end, Odin was seriously injured and several ancient gods died. This battle also completely established Odin's position, and the 9 realms also got rid of the fate of being used as a testing ground by the celestial group. It could be said that Odin was able to have the prestige that he had now, and for it he relied on himself. He was definitely the most powerful god-king in Asgard's history. Even if the enemy was as strong as Hela, she didn't take the slightest advantage when facing Odin. Not long after the fight began, Hela fell into a disadvantage. Her combat experience accumulated on the battlefield seemed a little immature in front of Odin. The reason for this was because Odin had experienced more battles than Hela. Once again, Odin waved the spear Gungnir in his hand and knocked Hela away. That powerful force could definitely penetrate the mountains at will. But Hela was not weak. An attack of this level couldn't hurt her at all. After realizing that she couldn't take advantage of Odin in close combat, Hela changed her strategy. In the next moment, a strong and dark divine power was released from Hela's body. This was the power of death, and even the space was distorted because of this power. Following this, there was also a huge world displayed by Hela. The kingdom of the dead, the kingdom of death. In the kingdom of the god of death, the dead souls of countless creatures were wailing. Strange monsters composed of various lives were struggling to crawl. As if to climb out of the kingdom of death and enter Asgard. Odin finally became solemn at this moment. While facing Hela, who was going all out, he also had to take it seriously. Looking at Hela, who had summoned her own kingdom of God, Odin raised the sharp spear, Gungnir, in his hand. A huge divine power, at this moment, gathered inside Gungnir. Then, aiming at Hela and the kingdom of death behind her, he directly threw it out. Gungnir, the eternal gun carrying a lot of Odin's supernatural power, seemed to turn into a meteor. With a long tail flame, with a light that pierced the sky, it rushed towards Hela. The shooting star spear that must be hit was another name for Gungnir, the gun of eternity. The eternal spear that would not be stained with the target's blood and would never stop was also the killer card in Odin's hands. Slash in one blow. Hela solemnly looked at the meteor, flying towards her. The huge power of death was gathered in the sword of the night sky in her hand. When the divine power had gathered to a certain level, Hela yelled, and then the sword of the night sky in her hand severely cut down the flying meteor. The black divine power turned into a huge arc of light, exuding an aura that disturbed all lives, and hit the flying shooting star. With a boom, there was a loud noise. The noise made most of the weak Asgardians cover their ears for fear of being deafened. At the same time, the shock wave caused by the impact of meteor and arc of light also spread. The river under the Rainbow Bridge was engulfed by the shock wave and turned into huge waves thousands of meters high, rushing towards Asgard. On the Earth, just the aftermath of Hela and Odin's fight would be enough to trigger a world-destroying disaster. But this was Asgard. An invisible and transparent barrier blocked those 1,000-meter-high huge waves when they were about to hit the city-state of Asgard. This was Asgard's protective measure, and it was also the famous Wall of Asgard in mythology. Even then, the movement caused by this impact still stunned all onlookers. Many Asgardians who had never seen Odin take action, for the first time understood what a real strong person was. Episode 58. Thor laid on the ground and watched this scene from the sidelines. His heart was full of bitterness. he realized that the gap between him and Hela was much larger than what he knew. When Hela beat him violently before, she basically didn't take him seriously, and she still slammed him on the ground. Perhaps every younger brother would inevitably be beaten up by his sister. However, compared with other people, Yubi paid more attention to the specific circumstances of this collision. In the end, who won? Hela or Odin? Soon, the result appeared in front of everyone. Hela was directly knocked out by this collision and fell behind Yubi. Hela's breath had also weakened a lot. She obviously suffered a big loss in this match. As for Odin, he stood high in the sky, overlooking Yubi and Hela below. This time, the result of Odin's and Hela's match was no different from before. Odin could seal Hela once, and naturally, he could seal Hela a second time. In terms of power, the current Hela was not yet Odin's opponent. After seeing this scene, the Asgardians breathed a sigh of relief, and then cheered for their God-King. With such a powerful God-King, Asgardians were naturally proud. At the same time, after Odin repelled Hela, he looked at Yubi. Although Yubi was still a mortal in Odin's eyes, he was not a simple mortal. So this time Odin didn't underestimate him, but really treated Yubi as an opponent. At the same time, his killing intent for Yubi was stronger than that of Hela. Asgard's authority cannot be challenged. You who disrespect the king of gods, die. Odin said coldly, as if he was pronouncing his judgment, pronouncing Yubi's death. At the same time Odin lifted Gungnir again. He pointed the tip of the spear at Yubi below. Gungnir, the eternally inevitable spear, turned into a meteor to pierce the enemy and penetrate his heart. Unlike the previous fight against Hela, Odin was obviously more serious this time. He even directly liberated Gungnir's real name and strived to kill with one blow. This time, not only did Odin's huge divine power be gathered in Gungnir, but also the power of the land of Asgard under his feet responded to Gungnir's real attack at this moment. Infinite power rose from the earth and turned into countless gorgeous auroras, which merged into Gungnir. This shot was countless times more terrifying than the previous meteor. The ancient celestial god group that year died under Odin's this trick. There was no doubt that the power of this trick absolutely surpassed the level of Heavenly Father and reached another realm. The attack hadn't fallen yet, and Yubi felt like he was being stared at, and his hair stood up. However, Yubi didn't intend to retreat. He was ready to face the difficult challenge of confronting the sharp spear Gungnir, whose real name had been liberated. At this moment, Hela appeared in front of Yubi. Her attitude was self-evident. She wanted to save Yubi from the deadly sharp spear. Hela knew that Yubi was very strong, but she didn't know how strong he was. So when facing Gungnir's real name liberation attack, Hela stood in front of Yubi without hesitation. Her attitude was self-evident. She wanted to protect Yubi. In fact, Hela didn't have the confidence to block this shot in her heart. However, behind her was the one she loved the most. After understanding Hela's mind, Yubi was very relieved. It was really a lucky thing to have this wife who was willing to stand in front of him, regardless of the consequences. However, this time, Yubi decided to come by himself. Odin's attack was clearly directed at him, and it was absolutely impossible for him to back down. So Yubi slowly crossed Hela, leaving only one sentence, "Wife, leave it to me." Yubi felt that a man could not always stand behind his wife, especially in this case. Huh. Die. Odin naturally saw the matter between Yubi and Hela. When he saw Hela standing in front of Yubi without hesitation, while Odin was angry, he was also inexplicably relieved. Hela finally learned how to protect. However, his killing intent towards Yubi became stronger. After seeing Yubi crossing Hela, Odin no longer hesitated. He directly threw the Gungnir, which had been liberated with its real name. The sharp spear Gungnir had completely turned into a light at this time. It carried the mighty power to destroy the world and came towards Yubi. No one doubted whether this blow could kill Yubi, except Hela. Looking at Yubi's back, Hela felt a sense of relief inexplicably. The feeling that someone could stand in front of you and protect you from the wind and the rain was really good. As for Yubi, after taking a deep breath, he made a fist with his right hand and lifted it slowly. "See you, Engine." Yubi spat out the words. While the sharp spear Gungnir had already attacked and was about to hit him with the sky full of aurora. Open heaven. When the gun was about to pierce through Yubi's heart, Yubi threw a fist and hit the spear point of the spear directly. In an instant, the sky's aurora collapsed and countless colors burst. Gungnir, the sharp gun that had shot countless enemies, was unable to advance under Yubi's domineering power. What's more frightening was that from the tip of the spear, countless fine cracks began to spread along the spear body. The spear known as the Eternal Spear, at this moment, was defeated by greater power. Then every inch of its body cracked. More than that, the lingering power of Yubi's fist also smashed the wall of Asgard, which was said to never fall. Even the atmosphere above Asgard was separated by a straight line. The sea below was also divided into two halves under Yubi's punch. The power of this punch was terrifying. It directly combed a central point for Asgard. Quiet, deadly quiet. Everyone stared blankly at Yubi's slender figure, speechless. It was hard for the Asgardians to imagine that such a terrifying power burst out of such an ordinary body. Odin also looked at Yubi in a daze. He had no more arrogance he had before. He had not even been able to react so far, and there was a sense of confusion in his heart. Who am I? Where am I? What should I do? The three ultimate questions of life came to Odin's mind. No need to talk about him. Even Hela looked at Yubi stupidly at this moment. For her, it was hard to believe that the man who punched the sky just now was actually her husband. Although Hela knew that Yubi's strength was very strong, she never expected it to be so terribly strong. This was really unbelievable. Seeing the effect he made, Yubi nodded. This was the reason why he held back his strength. Otherwise, if he really punched with his full strength, the whole Asgard might be gone. Even so, he directly defeated Odin. Odin's ridiculous pride was crushed to pieces at this moment. Episode 59. Looking at the fragments of the spear shattered by Yubi's fist, Odin's eyes were dull, and he fell directly from the air. It's impossible. It's the eternal spear, how could it? Even if the fact had happened, Odin still couldn't accept it. He couldn't believe how the eternal sharp spear Gungnir could be crushed by anyone. Moreover, Yubi, who he hated and wanted to kill the most, was the one who crushed it to pieces. Not to mention Odin. Even the Asgardians behind him were full of despair at the moment. Even the God King Odin failed, and the eternal sharp spear was smashed. Who else could stop that man? Could it be that Asgard, which had been in the universe for countless years, would be destroyed today? No one could answer this question, because no one would say the answer. At this moment, all Asgardians had only deep despair and anxiety in their hearts. As for Yubi, naturally he would not be confused. He knew the damage he had caused himself. When Odin was shocked and unable to react, he slowly walked towards Odin. He had to unscrew the neck of this terrible old man for what he had said today. How dare he not agree with my marriage with Hela? Who gave him the courage? He was married to Hela. It was useless even if OAA came, he said. But at this moment, Hela hurried up and stopped Yubi. Let me come. Hela looked at Yubi and said pleadingly. The meaning was obvious. She would personally take Odin's life. Yubi thought for a while and nodded. Fair enough. Moreover, this in itself was the enmity between Hela and Odin. And it was most appropriate to let their father and daughter resolve it. Hela smiled after seeing Yubi agree. Then with the steps of the great demon king, she walked towards Odin with the sword of the night sky in her hand. As if he hadn't seen her, Odin still stared blankly at the broken eternal spear. He had not been able to accept the reality until now, and it was difficult for him to admit that he failed. Because Yubi's punch not only smashed Gungnir the sharp spear but also opened the sky and smashed his arrogance at the same time. Odin, who had traversed the universe for millions of years, his pride was stepped on for the first time. It was normal that it was difficult for him to accept this blow. So that he didn't even notice Hela, the goddess of death, who was slowly approaching. However, just as Hela walked towards Odin, the Queen Frigga stood up and stood in front of Hela. Child, it's enough. Frigga begged at the moment, looking at Hela. Although she was very angry with Odin's many practices, Odin was her husband who had been with her for so long, after all. How was it possible that Frigga could watch Odin die? However, Hela looked firm and shook her head. She couldn't let Odin go, just as Odin wouldn't let her go. So even if Frigga intercedes, Hela would not change her mind. Get out of the way. Don't think I dare not kill you. Hela said coldly, looking at Frigga, who was still in front of her. It was undeniable that Frigga was kind to her. But so what? In the end, didn't she watch her being cultivated by Odin to become what she was now? If Frigga at that time could stand up to stop Odin and reach out to hold her when she slipped into the abyss, would all of this still happen today? Sometimes, looking at the evil and not stopping it was a kind of evil in itself. I beg you, let your father go. He is at fault, but you can't kill him, you will be infamous. Frigga was still unwilling to give in. She opened her arms to block Hela. She couldn't just watch her daughter kill her father in front of her. So no matter what, she wanted to stop Hela's actions. This was for Odin and Hela. If Hela really killed Odin, she would bear the reputation of killing her father. However, even if Frigga interceded, Hela's eyes were still determined. The murderous heart had already started and couldn't be held back. For the last time, get out of the way, or I will kill both of you together. Hela said coldly, looking at Frigga, who was still stubbornly blocking her. This sentence was her last patience. Frigga shook her head. Tears were streaming down her face, but she didn't care. She still refused to take a step back. At this time Odin also recovered and saw Frigga standing in front of Hela. A wry smile appeared on Odin's face. Frigga, let me go. It's my and her business. Odin got up from the ground and then said wearily. Frigga turned her head and saw Odin's firm eyes. Just like long ago, he would not listen to her opinions at all. Frigga wanted to say something, but Odin had no patience. His divine power wrapped around Frigga and prevented her from continuing to stand in front of Hela. Hela didn't hesitate and walked over Frigga towards Odin. In the end, she stopped in front of Odin. I won. Hela said to Odin. She didn't kill him right away. Odin nodded. A trace of unwillingness appeared on his face. He was certainly unwilling. Who would have thought that he would lose in the hands of a mortal? However, it didn't make sense to think about it now. You really look like me, even what you do is exactly the same. Odin suddenly said to Hela. The previous hatred was no longer in his eyes. Instead, they had a touch of relief. As for the image, he said, it naturally referred to rebellion and the killing of the previous king. Wasn't what Hela doing now exactly the same as what Odin did back then? The difference was that Hela killed his father and Odin killed his brother. You cultivated me, and you made me what I am now. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself. Hela suddenly didn't rush to kill Odin. Odin, without the sharp spear, was like a paper tiger. It was impossible for him to be her opponent. That's why Hela was willing to talk to Odin at this time. If possible, Hela wanted to hear Odin say that he regretted it. Yeah, I don't regret that I did it, because I got a satisfied heir. Do you know? When I saw you standing in front of that mortal, I knew you were my best heir. The king can't just kill. He also needs to learn to protect the people of the country. You finally understand this truth. Odin smiled, relieved, and said slowly. He did do a lot of things he felt sorry for to Hela, and there were many things for which he couldn't forgive himself now. But at this moment, looking at Hela standing in front of him, Odin suddenly felt that the results were not bad. If Asgard was led by Hela in the future, he could be rest assured. Episode 60. What's the use of these? I will still kill you. Hela's killing intent would not be shaken by Odin's words. His words were totally useless. In short, Odin must die today. Odin also knew his end. Plus his own time limit was approaching. So there was actually nothing to regret. Come on, child, kill me, and you will be the new king of Asgard from now on. Asgard recognized you, and you were also recognized by Odin. Odin did not resist. Instead, he completely handed over the position of his god-king to Hela. Some people might not understand Odin's intention to do this, but Frigga understood it. Odin was making atonement and repaying for what he did to Hela before. But hatred had nothing to do with the position of the king of gods. Hela had the ability to become the king of gods and could make Asgard better. Odin had confidence in this. This was also the reason why Odin handed over his throne to Hela. He wanted to find a qualified king for his Asgard. Hela also understood this truth, but this was not a reason to forgive Odin. After listening to Odin's words, Hela lifted the sword of the night sky in his hand, preparing to pierce Odin's heart. At this moment, a figure full of thunder flew from behind. Stop, come at me if you want revenge, come kill me. The person who came was Thor, and from his appearance, he had already awakened his true potential. Seeing Hela was about to kill Odin, Thor couldn't help but jump out to stop her. Because of Thor's relationship, Hela's movements did stop for a while. Odin opened his eyes again and looked at Thor, who was coming. My child, I am proud of your bravery. But you shouldn't stop her. This is my own fault. I will pay it back myself. In addition, I hope you can forget this hatred, take care of your mother, and live happily. Odin said to Thor, not paying attention to his own life and death. He was completely relieved. Then he looked at Frigga again. After I die, you will help Hela well. Your relationship with her has always been good. By the way, take care of Thor and don't let him do stupid things. When everything was explained, Odin had no more worries. He closed his eyes and waited for death. Hela did not hesitate. She clenched the sword of the night sky in her hand and pierced Odin's chest neatly. As Odin said, he must pay for his past. Even if Odin finally repented, Hela could not forgive him. It's just that after finally killing Odin, Hela couldn't get any satisfaction. Instead, she felt a kind of hollowness. At this time, Thor couldn't help it anymore. He was about to rush towards Hela while thunder and lightning filled his entire body. Frigga also broke free from Odin's imprisonment on her with divine power and then stopped Thor, who was rushing. Thor! Get out! Looking at Thor, whose face was full of sadness and hatred, Frigga said loudly. Then Frigga turned and looked at Hela. This is his own choice, and I won't blame you. I just hope that you will eventually become a great god-king, as he said. Odin was dead. Frigga was very sad, anyone could see it. But there really was no meaning in resenting Hela, because this was all about paying off debts. After all, Odin paid the price for what he did. But he also cultivated an heir stronger than himself. Hela said nothing. She just came to Yubi and grabbed Yubi's hand. Originally, Hela thought that after she became the king of gods, she would be very excited and happy. But at this moment, she only felt empty in her heart. That's the days of not knowing what to do after the goal was reached. Yubi didn't say much about this, but hugged Hela to comfort her. Soon, Frigga also woke up from grief, and then used her divine power to speak to all the Asgardians. From today, Hela will become the new king of Asgard. She is the blood of Odin's family, the heir appointed by Odin, and the king of all of us. Afterwards, Frigga came to Hela, grabbed Hela's hand, and slowly walked in the direction of Asgard. As for Odin, Thor hugged his body and followed behind. As Hela walked towards Asgard slowly, the Asgardians were restless. They couldn't believe that such an enemy of Asgard was about to become their new god-king. However, the Queen Frigga personally acknowledged Hela's status, that was what the queen said. As for the fact that Hela was the blood of Odin's family, the Asgardians were also dubious. But there should be no falsehood. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Frigga to recognize the status of Hela. So, did they have a new king? Many Asgardians were hesitating. After all, the previous battle between Hela and Odin was still vivid. However, watching Hela and Frigga slowly walking together, some people had already recognized Hela's identity. Why would Queen Frigga deceive them? Soon, there was the first person to kneel for Hela. And after someone took the lead, there were more and more such people. In their own way, they recognized the identity of Hela and recognized that they would become the people of Hela in the future. Seeing this scene, a smile finally appeared on the corner of Hela's mouth. All this was exactly what she had always dreamed of. The God-King of Asgard, this was what should belong to her. But now, the dream had finally come true. Holding the hand of Queen Frigga, Hela walked towards the people of Asgard. Under the adoration of countless people, Hela was finally crowned king. Although the process had twists and turns, the final outcome was good. Hela finally finished what she had always wanted to do and successfully wore the crown. From then on, she was no longer the goddess of death, Hela, but the god-king, Hela. The day after she announced his enthronement and accepted the Asgardians' worship, Hela found Yubi and took Yubi to a place. This was Odin's treasure house, which contained many treasures that Odin had collected over the years. I'll take you to meet some people. Hela said to Yubi, and then took Yubi and walked into the treasure house. Along the way, the treasury was an eye-opener for Yubi. He saw many rare treasures, such as infinite gloves, although they were imitations. For example, the spears used by the ancient heroes of Asgard were still shining with cold light. There was eternal flame as well. When passing by the eternal fire, Hela took a handful of fire and walked toward the depths again. When she came to an empty floor, Hela stopped walking. Then she summoned the sword of the night sky, transformed it into the form of a hammer, and smashed it down. A deep hole appeared in front of the two. Let's go down and take a look. Hela said to Yubi, and then took Yubi's hand, and the two entered the hole together.